The registration is in my son's name now.
That's what the HOA president screamed at two of my own officers when they arrived at my house on a Saturday afternoon. The "it" was a 1968 Mustang fastback I'd rebuilt with my late wife and my own son. The registration in her son's name was a forged receipt she'd notarized with a coming notary whose license had been revoked in 2022. The two officers, Sergeant Brennan and Officer Murchison, stood 20 feet from my open garage, waiting for me to identify myself. I was in jeans and a faded UGA cap. I removed the cap. I turned around. They snapped to attention and saluted. I'd been the chief of their department for 6 years. The HOA president stood across the cul-de-sac with the forged receipt loose in her hand and watched her empire end in 20 seconds. Tell me below, would you have arrested her on the spot or let her keep digging? Cedarvale sits at the south end of Forsyth County, Georgia, about 40 minutes north of Atlanta on a Saturday with no Falcons traffic, 25,000 people, 2 stoplights you can name from memory, a police department of 41 officers, 14 patrol cars, 1 mounted unit, and a chief named Sterling Halloran, who's been doing the job since 2018. That last one is me. I came up through Atlanta PD in 1992, 6 years on patrol in Zone 3. Moved to Forsyth County Sheriff in 2001, made detective in 2006, ran major crimes for 9 years, came to Cedarvale as deputy chief in 2015, and took the corner office in 2018 when Chief Easterling retired to a farm outside Calhoun. My wife Marguerite passed away in 2019, brain aneurysm. She was 47. She was making coffee. She set the mug down. She sat at the kitchen table. She closed her eyes. She never opened them. The paramedics worked her for 19 minutes. The neurosurgeon at North Fulton told me at 3 in the morning that there had been nothing for him to fix. I drove home at sunrise and sat in the garage and looked at the rusted-out 1968 Ford Mustang fastback she'd bought me at Barrett-Jackson in Scottsdale 2 years before. She'd handed me the auction paddle and said, "Sterling, we're buying it. Tate is 12. The two of you need a project." He had been 12. He's 19 now. He starts at the University of Georgia in 2 weeks. We worked on that car together for 4 years in our old garage in Roswell, sanding, welding, rebuilding the 4-speed, dropping in a fresh 289 V8. The pearl white paint was hers. The cherry red interior was Tate's. The brass dash plaque with the date November 18th, 17, for my 2 favorite men, was hers, riveted onto the glove box 4 months before the aneurysm. I sold the Roswell house in 2023 because I couldn't sit on her porch swing anymore. I bought a 4-bedroom in Briarwood Glen Estates in Cedarvale. New construction, brick, pine straw beds, a 2-car garage I painted myself the color of a Coca-Cola bottle. I didn't tell anyone in Briarwood Glen that I was the chief. I wear jeans and a UGA cap on weekends. I drive a 2014 F-150 with the original tailgate dent from a Lowe's parking lot. I keep my badge in my glove compartment. The Cedarvale PD station is 15 minutes east. None of the new neighbors recognized me, and I didn't see a reason to introduce myself with a title. I'd come to Briarwood Glen to be quiet. Marguerite was a quiet person. I was trying to be more like her. Hadley Lockwood introduced herself 2 weekends after I closed on the house. She drove a pearl white Mercedes GLE, the same color as the Mustang in my garage, which she would later tell me was providential. She brought a key lime pound cake from the Publix bakery on a flowered porcelain plate. She wore a coral blouse and white capris and gold sandals. She told me she had been HOA president for 9 years and that we just love welcoming new families to Briarwood Glen. I thanked her. I took the cake. I told her my son and I would enjoy it. She didn't ask what I did for a living. She did ask, twice, about the car in my garage. The first time I told her it was a rebuild project I'd done with my son. The second time I told her it wasn't for sale. She smiled the way some women smile when they've already decided you're going to change your mind. 3 weeks after the pound cake, Hadley's son walked into my garage, uninvited. I was changing the front sway bar bushings on the Mustang. The garage door was up because Georgia in late August does not negotiate temperature. A muscular kid in white tennis shorts came up my driveway, stopped at the open bay, and said, "Whoa, is that a 68? His name was Bryson Lockwood, 19, tall, blonde, the kind of boy who walks into rooms expecting people to look at him. I told him it was. I told him I was busy. He stood at the edge of my driveway for 9 more minutes, asking me what year the rear end was and whether the carburetor was original. I gave one-word answers. He left. That evening, Hadley sent me a text. "Sterling, Bryson is obsessed with the Mustang. He turns 19 next month. Whit and I would love to talk about a fair purchase. Could we come over Saturday?" I wrote back, "Not for sale. Thank you for the cake." She wrote back 9 seconds later. "Sterling, every car is for sale. Let's just have a conversation." I didn't reply. She came to my door anyway on Saturday morning with Whit. He was bigger than I remembered. Mid-50s, salt and pepper, polo over khakis. He had the wide, calm handshake of a commercial real estate developer who's used to closing deals at the country club. He told me he'd be willing to write a check that day for $25,000. I told him the car wasn't for sale. He raised it to 35. I told him it wasn't for sale. He paused. He nodded slowly. He smiled the way men smile when they're about to start charging interest. "Well, Sterling, we respect that, we sure do. But we wanted to put a fair number on the table while we could." They left. Whit's pearl-white Range Rover backed slowly out of my driveway. Hadley waved out the passenger window. The first violation arrived in my HOA portal 3 days later. Vehicle covered in excessive dust, visible from street, violation of community appearance standards, fine, $200. The photograph attached was taken at 9 in the morning. The Mustang was in my closed garage. The dust was a single thin film visible through a window because I'd been driving the F-150 instead. I read the violation twice. I went outside, hosed the car down, dried it with a microfiber, and paid the $200 on my phone. I didn't argue. I didn't call Hadley out. I didn't tell her what I did for a living. Cops learn early that the loudest move is rarely the most useful one. If you tell a fish you can see the hook, the fish stops biting. If you don't, the fish keeps reaching for it. 3 weeks later, the second violation came through. Vehicle starting noise after 9 p.m. Community quiet hours violation. Fine, $250. The starting noise had been the F-150's diesel cold start at 6:15 in the morning, not the Mustang at all. The Mustang's battery had been disconnected in the garage for 43 days. I checked the body cam on my own Ring doorbell. The video showed me leaving for work at 6:13 and starting the truck at 6:15. The Mustang hadn't moved. I paid the fine. I made a small note in my phone. 3 weeks after that, a third violation came in. Driveway oil staining, visible from street. I walked out to my driveway. There was a small puddle of automotive oil at the foot of my driveway. The puddle was not there the previous evening when I'd come home. The puddle was located exactly where the Mustang sat when it was outside, except the Mustang had been in the garage for 9 days straight. I went to the side of the house, found a discarded plastic gallon jug behind my AC unit, and lifted it. It still smelled of the kind of cheap motor oil that comes in red plastic. Someone had poured oil onto my driveway in the middle of the night. I paid the fine. I bagged the plastic jug. I labeled it with a date and a time. I put it in a clean cooler in the back of my garage. If Hadley Lockwood wanted to play a slow game, I would play a slower one. The next month, Hadley parked her Mercedes across the foot of my driveway. Not in it, not blocking it. Across the foot, wheels barely touching the curb. The long, pearl-white side of the GLE running exactly along the property line where my driveway met the cul-de-sac. She did it the first Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock. She did it again Thursday. She did it again the Tuesday after. When I asked her about it, polite, on the sidewalk, in jeans and my UGA cap, she smiled and said, "Sterling, I'm just visiting our neighbor across the street. You're not blocked in. I checked." She had. The Mercedes was parked exactly the way a closer parks, legally, visibly, just close enough to remind me she was there. The fifth violation arrived 2 days later. Notice of HOA garage inspection, pursuant to Community Section 8.4, B. Inspection scheduled Friday at 11 a.m. Inspector, Briarwood Glen Community Standards Committee. There is no provision in Georgia law that allows an HOA to enter a private garage without consent or a court order. There is, in fact, a long line of Georgia case law that says the opposite. I'd cited it in a deposition in 2014. I knew it cold. Friday at 11 o'clock, 3 men walked up my driveway in matching navy polos. The first one was Hadley's husband's brother-in-law. I'd looked him up the day before. The second one was a day laborer who'd been picked up at the Home Depot on Highway 20. The third one was carrying a clipboard and a digital camera. None of them had a Georgia inspector's license. None of them had a uniform. None of them had identification beyond a name tag printed at home. I stood at the closed garage door with my coffee. Gentlemen, good morning. We're with the Briarwood Glen Community Standards Committee, sir, here to do your scheduled inspection. Are any of you licensed inspectors in the state of Georgia? The clipboard guy blinked. I'm with the committee, sir. Do any of you have a court order? The 3 of them looked at each other. Sir, the HOA bylaws authorize. The HOA bylaws cannot authorize what state law forbids. I'm declining the inspection. Have a fine day. I closed the garage door. I went inside. I made a note in my phone. I called my deputy chief and asked him to quietly run a name check on the 3 men. 2 had Georgia warrants for unrelated misdemeanors. 1 had an active arrest order out of DeKalb County. I didn't tell Hadley. 2 days later, a friend at the Cedar Vale Country Club called me. He told me Hadley had been telling people at her wine night that Sterling Halloran was a sad case, and that the poor widower has clearly been hitting the bottle since his wife died. She'd said it twice. She'd said it loud enough that 2 members at the next table had stood up and left. I thanked my friend. I drank a glass of unsweetened iced tea. That same week, my son Tate came home from his summer job at the Publix on Atlanta Highway and walked into the kitchen wearing his uniform polo and a look I hadn't seen on his face since he was 13. Dad, I just punched a kid at the pool. I set my book down. He hadn't actually punched anyone. He'd been at the community pool, and a board member, a man named Whit Lockwood's golf buddy whose name I didn't know yet, had walked up to him at the snack bar and said, in front of 3 other teenagers, that Tate's father was the talk of the neighborhood for the wrong reasons, and that maybe Tate could be the one to help his old man let go of the past. Tate had set down his Gatorade. He had looked the man in the eye. He had said, "Sir, my father is doing fine. My mother is doing better than fine. And you should ask yourself if you're proud of what just came out of your mouth." Then he had walked away. I told him he had handled it better than I would have at his age. I didn't tell him what I was about to do. The next move was the abandoned vehicle claim. It arrived on October 4th in a registered envelope. Briarwood Glen Estates Homeowners Association versus Sterling Halloran. Notice of abandoned and non-operational vehicle on residential property. The HOA was citing Georgia Code Section 4011-2, abandoned motor vehicles, and threatening to refer my Mustang to the city for impoundment in 30 days, unless I provided proof of current operational status and active road insurance. The Mustang has been on a Haggerty Classic car policy since 2018. It has a valid tag. It runs. The reason the HOA could call it non-operational was because I had been keeping the battery disconnected in the garage to preserve the cells while we finished the chrome work on the bumper, and they had decided that meant the car was dead. I made one phone call. To my friend Owen Pelletier at Haggerty in Traverse City. He emailed me a stamped certificate of current coverage in 11 minutes. I forwarded it to the HOA portal with a 1-sentence cover note. Per attached, vehicle is currently registered, insured, and operational. Please withdraw the notice. The HOA did not withdraw the notice. Instead, Hadley personally drove past my house at 4:30 the following afternoon, when she knew I'd moved the Mustang to the driveway for its monthly run. I'd connected the battery. I'd warmed the engine. I'd taken it down the cul-de-sac twice. She photographed it from the road as I was wiping a streak of pollen off the hood with a microfiber. The next day, the HOA portal had a new violation. Vehicle visibly disrepair, pollen, surface grime, oil sheen on hood, confirmed photograph attached. The photograph was a high-angle telephoto from 60 feet away. The oil sheen was sunlight on the wax I'd just buffed. A cease and desist letter came 2 days later from a coming attorney whose name I'd seen on a bus bench on the way to work. The letter accused me of continuing community blight and demanded the Mustang be removed from my property within 14 days. The letter had a typo in the second paragraph and listed a Georgia State bar number that, when I checked it, belonged to an attorney who had retired in 2016. I made another note in my phone. That weekend, my son Tate came home from school where he'd been buying a graduation tassel and told me he had run into Bryson Lockwood in the parking lot. Bryson had walked up to him by the back of the F-150 and said, "Bro, just tell your dad to sell the car. My dad's going to make this hurt if he doesn't. It's going to be mine one way or the other." Tate told him to back up. Bryson laughed and walked away. That night, I sat at the kitchen island with Tate. I made him a grilled cheese with the kind of sharp cheddar his mother used to buy at the DeKalb Farmers Market. I poured myself coffee. He poured himself coffee, even though he doesn't really drink it, because that's what we'd been doing the last 6 months when something serious needed to be said. I told him this. "Bud, there is a moment coming. I want you ready for it. I want you calm. I want you observant. I want you to follow my lead and not speak unless I ask you to. Can you do that?" He looked at me a long second. He had Marguerite's stubborn left eyebrow. He nodded once. "Dad, whatever you've got planned, I'm in." I told him about the body cam. I told him about the deputy chief. I told him about Detective Bramwell. I told him exactly how Georgia law treats a false police report. I told him about the sheriff's warrant his godfather had been quietly preparing for 2 weeks. He listened the whole way through. He looked at the Mustang through the kitchen window in the garage at the end of the hallway. He smiled the slow, careful smile his mother had used when she was about to win an argument. "Dad, she really doesn't know who you are, does she?" "No, son, she doesn't." I drank my coffee. The kitchen smelled like sharp cheddar and rain on pine. Somewhere out on the cul-de-sac, a screen door slapped shut. I had been a cop for 32 years. I had seen 1,000 people overreach. The pattern is always the same. They keep pushing until the law shows up, and the law always does. I asked Wynn Mercer in Internal Affairs to do a quiet records pull. Wynn is 46, 21 years on the force. She's the kind of investigator who keeps a paperback Bible and a paperback Constitution on the same shelf, and a small framed photograph of her late father, a retired patrol sergeant in Macon, on the corner of her desk. I asked her to take a discreet look at Hadley Lockwood's history of police interactions with Cedarvale PD and the broader Forsyth County system. She did not ask why. She came back to my office on Tuesday morning with a folder and the look of a woman who had been up late. "Chief." "Sit down, Sergeant." She walked me through it slowly. Hadley Lockwood had filed 12 vehicle recovery complaints with the Cedarvale Police Department over the previous 6 years. Every single one had been filed against a resident of Briarwood Glen Estates. Every single one had named her son Bryson, or one of his friends, as the rightful, registered buyer. None of them had ever resulted in an arrest, because in every case, when officers arrived, the homeowner had either capitulated and surrendered the vehicle, or had hired a lawyer fast enough to make Hadley back off. 4 of the 12 complaints had resulted in homeowners selling vehicles at deeply discounted prices to purchase agreements notarized by a coming notary whose license, Wynn discovered, had been revoked in 2022 for unrelated misconduct. Wynn flipped a page. The Briarwood Glen Estates HOA's bank account at Truist had received $187,000 in fine collections over the previous 4 years. The HOA's documented expenditures over the same period totaled $43,000. The difference, $144,000, had been wired in small monthly amounts to a Georgia LLC called Briarwood Glen Community Development. The registered agent was Whit Lockwood. The LLC's stated business purpose was real estate acquisition and improvement within Briarwood Glen Estates. Wynn flipped another page. Briarwood Glen Community Development LLC had purchased 4 distressed properties within the subdivision over the previous 5 years. Each one had been purchased from a homeowner who had received between $6,000 and $14,000 in HOA fines in the year leading up to the sale. Each one had been resold within 14 months at an average profit of $192,000. The Lockwoods were running a slow squeeze. Drive a homeowner into financial pressure with fines, Pressure them with false police reports and vehicle disputes. Buy their home at distressed price through a Shell LLC. Resell at full market. Wynn flipped one more page. The HOA's Community Standards Committee was 3 men. Hadley's husband's brother-in-law, Vance Lockwood, a man named Reno Tarver, who had 2 outstanding warrants in DeKalb County, a man named Dixon Boudry, who had been deported in 2019, returned in 2021, and had no work authorization. None of them held any Georgia inspector's license. All 3 had been allowed into homes in Briarwood Glen Estates by Hadley over the past 2 years. Wynn closed the folder. She set it on my desk. She did not say a word. I looked at the photograph on her desk of her father in his patrol uniform. I looked at the photograph of Marguerite on the bookshelf behind me. I said one sentence. "Sergeant, let's catch them all." Wynn nodded once, solemn, with her chin tucked the same way Tate's did, the same way Marguerite's had. I asked her to keep this quiet. I asked her to walk it across the hallway to Major Crimes. I asked her to bring Detective Holt Bramwell into a conference room at the end of the day. She stood up. She paused at the door. "Chief, one more thing." "Yes?" "Mrs. Lockwood doesn't know what you do for a living, does she?" "No, Sergeant." "Good." She closed the door behind her. Detective Holt Bramwell sat down in my conference room at 5:30 that Tuesday, with a coffee in one hand and a manila folder in the other. Holt is 38, Major Crimes, 10 years on the force. He grew up in Gainesville, served 4 years in the Georgia Army National Guard, and runs marathons in zip codes nobody in Cedarvale visits. He listened to Wynn lay out the pattern. He listened to me explain the Mustang. He listened to the recording of Hadley's voicemail offering $35,000. He listened to a description of the cease and desist letter with the retired attorney's bar number on it. When Wynn was done, Holt closed the folder. He looked at me. "Chief, with respect, you're a party to this case. I can't have you running it." "I know that, Detective. I'm here as a witness, not as the chief. I want this case off my desk and onto yours." "Then I want to do this right. I want a warrant package by Friday. I want Sheriff Thrasher's office involved, because the LLC and the husband's commercial property cross jurisdictions. I want the DA in on the false report charges from day one. And I want at least one documented attempt by Mrs. Lockwood to act on her scheme before we move." I called Cassandra Pickering at the Forsyth County District Attorney's office that night. Cassandra had been the assistant DA on 3 of my cases back in my Major Crimes days. She'd made DA in 2022. She picked up on the second ring. She listened. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she said one sentence. "Chief, I've been waiting for a case like this in Briarwood Glen for 2 years. We had 3 quiet civil settlements with that HOA last year. Nobody ever pressed." "I'll press." "Then let's build it the right way." Sheriff Buford Thrasher was a harder phone call. Buford and I had known each other since the Roswell precinct in the 90s. He's 6'5", 62, drives a 1994 GMC Sierra to work because he doesn't trust new trucks. I told him what I needed. He told me he'd have a search warrant for the Lockwood residence and Witt's commercial real estate office prepared by Thursday afternoon. He told me he'd have 3 deputies on standby for execution. He told me he'd buy me a steak at the Texas Roadhouse on Atlanta Highway when this was done. I drove home that Wednesday night and walked to the garage. Tate had just finished waxing the Mustang's hood. The brass dash plate caught the overhead halogen. I touched the rivets Marguerite had set with her own thumbnail in 2017. The next morning, I issued a press release through the Cedarvale Police Department's public information officer. The release announced the 2nd annual Forsyth County Restored Classics Showcase at the coming fairgrounds, sponsored by Cedarvale PD's Youth Outreach Division. The showcase was scheduled 6 weeks out. The release included a photograph of 3 restored cars participating in the event, one of which was my 1968 Mustang Fastback, photographed in my garage, with the Briarwood Glen Estates monument visible in the soft background of the shot. I knew Hadley read the Forsyth County News. I knew Hadley subscribed to Cedarvale PD email updates because all Briarwood Glen residents did. I knew she would see that photograph by Thursday morning. And I knew exactly what a woman like Hadley Lockwood would do when she saw the car she'd been trying to take from me publicly showcased by the same police department whose dispatch line she'd been hoping to weaponize. She would move faster. She would file the false report sooner. She would make her mistake on a timeline I could control. The takeaway is simple. The fastest way to catch a person who only acts in private is to give them a public reason to act in public. I told Tate the plan over chicken thighs and rice on Thursday night. He listened the whole way through. He asked one question. "Dad, where do you want me Saturday?" "Upstairs window, phone camera. Don't come down unless I call your name twice." He nodded. He cleared the plates. He went up to his room. I heard him close his door and call his best friend on speaker. He used the same low, calm voice his mother used to use to settle a litter of rescue kittens. I sat on the back porch in the cool October air and looked at the moon over the long-leaf pines. Hadley Lockwood would call dispatch on Saturday at 1:47 in the afternoon. I would be ready by 1:30. The press release ran in the Forsyth County News on Thursday morning. By Thursday evening, Hadley Lockwood had made 4 mistakes. The first arrived in my mailbox in a beige envelope. A formal HOA lien, $12,400 in cumulative fines, late fees, community remediation surcharges, and vehicle compliance penalties. The lien was filed with the Forsyth County Clerk of Court. Whit Lockwood's signature was on the cover page as treasurer. I forwarded the lien to Cassandra at the DA's office. She forwarded it to the clerk. The clerk called Hadley's HOA office Friday morning to inform her that the lien was procedurally invalid under the Georgia Property Owners Association Act because the HOA had failed to provide statutory 30-day pre-lien notice. The lien was withdrawn within an hour. The clerk's office sent me a stamped copy of the withdrawal. The second mistake arrived on Friday at 1 in the afternoon. A Forsyth County code enforcement inspector knocked on my door. Polite, apologetic. He'd received an anonymous complaint that the property at my address was in significant disrepair and constituted a public nuisance under Georgia Title 41. He walked the perimeter. He looked at the pine straw beds I'd raked the previous Sunday. He looked at the painted garage. He looked at my hostas. He went to his truck. He came back. He had a no violation observed report in his clipboard. "Chief, I'm sorry for the visit. I owed it to the complaint to walk it. Have a good afternoon." He drove away. The third mistake came on Friday afternoon in the form of a next-door post written by Hadley herself. The post described, without naming me, a resident who had been showing off his vehicles publicly to provoke neighbors, and who was openly disregarding HOA leadership requests. The post invited residents to attend a special HOA meeting Saturday at 6 in the evening to discuss concerning patterns of community disruption. 47 residents commented. I screenshotted the post. I sent it to Holt. Holt added it to the manifest. The fourth mistake was the one she did not see coming. That night at 9:15, my son Tate's phone rang. The caller was Caspian Wells, Tate's friend from Lambert High School. Quiet kid, plays trumpet in marching band. Caspian had been one of Bryson Lockwood's casual friends from the country club pool. Tate took the call in the kitchen. I was at the counter with a cup of decaf. I could only hear Tate's side of the call. "Hey, Cass." "Uh-huh. Wait, what? Slow down. Who did? Say that again?" "Cass, are you serious?" No, I won't say anything. Cass, you should call my dad." He looked at me. "Dad, Caspian needs to talk to you." Caspian Wells was a 16-year-old boy with a wavering voice and a steady moral compass. He told me, in pieces, that Bryson Lockwood and Hadley had sat him down at the Lockwood Kitchen Island that afternoon and asked him to sign a witness statement on a typed document that said he had been present when Sterling Halloran sold the Mustang to Bryson Lockwood for $35,000 in cash on August 14th of this year. There had been no such sale. Bryson had not paid for anything. The signature on the document was a forgery of mine. Caspian recognized it because his father had been a notary in Cumming for 22 years, and Caspian had grown up looking at signatures. Caspian had refused to sign. He'd told Hadley he had to go home for dinner. He'd called Tate the moment he got into his car. I asked him 3 things. Was he willing to come to the station tomorrow morning to make a sworn statement to Detective Holt Bramwell? He said yes. Did he know if anyone else had signed the document? He said yes, Bryson had signed. Bryson's girlfriend Cassidy had signed. Did he know what Hadley was planning to do with the document? He said, Mrs. Lockwood said she was filing a stolen vehicle report tomorrow afternoon. I thanked him. I hung up. I looked at Tate. He looked at me. I said one sentence. She just gave us the exact time. I called Holt. I called Cassandra. I called Sheriff Thrasher. The warrant package was filed at 4 in the morning. The trap was set for 1:47 the next afternoon. Saturday morning came in soft and cool, the way an October morning in North Georgia comes when the front has just pushed through. The light was the color of honey. The longleaf pines smelled clean. A cardinal sat on the mailbox at the end of the driveway and did not move when I walked out for the paper. I had been up since 5. Tate came downstairs at 7:30 in pajama pants and a UGA hoodie. He poured himself a glass of orange juice. He sat at the kitchen island where his mother used to grade her chemistry homework. He looked at me. Dad, you sleep at all? Not really. You okay? Yeah, bud, I'm okay. He chewed his thumbnail the way Marguerite used to. He looked through the kitchen window into the garage where the Mustang sat in the pearl-white light. He took a long breath. Mom would have loved today. I had to look away for a second. I drank my coffee. I cleared my throat. She would have made biscuits. With sausage gravy. With too much pepper. He smiled. He went back upstairs to shower. I spent the morning doing exactly what I would have done on a normal Saturday. I drank coffee. I read the paper. I checked my email. I texted Holt at 9. He confirmed Caspian's sworn statement had been notarized at 8:15 and added to the warrant. He confirmed Sheriff Thrasher's deputies were posted 3 streets over starting at noon. He confirmed Wynn Mercer would be parked in an unmarked Crown Victoria on the corner of Briarwood Glen Drive and Magnolia Trace from 1:30 onward. He confirmed my body camera was paired with the central server at the station. He confirmed 2 officers from the day shift, Tucker Brennan, Sergeant, and Lane Murchison, Rookie, were the next 2 units in the dispatch queue for vehicle recovery calls within the Briarwood Glen zip code. He confirmed they did not know anything. At 11 o'clock, I went into the garage. I lifted the bay door. I rolled the Mustang halfway out into the driveway. Front end pointed at the cul-de-sac, the way I'd been doing once a month for 2 years. I connected the battery. I cranked the engine. I let it warm for 6 minutes. I shut it down. I left the hood open. I got a clean chamois and a bottle of detail spray. I knelt at the front bumper and started polishing the grill. I wore jeans, a faded UGA cap, a worn navy t-shirt with a small bleach stain on the left collar from a load of laundry I'd done wrong in 2020. I clipped my body camera into the inside breast pocket of my t-shirt, so the lens peeked out at the top of the fabric. I activated it at 1:30. The red light blinked twice and went solid. Tate came down at 12:45 and went upstairs to his bedroom on the 2nd floor. He opened the window that overlooked the driveway. He set his iPhone on a small tripod his mother had bought him for his 14th birthday. He hit record on the camera. He gave me a thumbs up from the window. I gave him one back. At 1:42, Hadley Lockwood walked out her front door across the cul-de-sac. She wore a coral blouse, white capris, gold sandals, same outfit as the pound cake day. She had a manila folder in her left hand. Bryson followed her, taller than her by half a foot, wearing tennis shorts and a polo. He had a printout in his hands. Hadley walked to the foot of her own driveway. She stopped. She crossed her arms. She was facing my driveway directly. She wanted to be seen. At 1:45, I saw the dispatch ping on my phone over my wristband notification. I had cloned the feed. I watched a single line of text scroll across. CVDSP, Vehicle Recovery, 4815 Briarwood Glen. Caller reports stolen Mustang. At 1:47, 2 units acknowledged. C12, Brennan. C19, Murchison, en route. I went back to polishing the grill. I did not look up at Hadley. I did not look up at her son. I did not look at the upstairs window where my own son was filming. I just polished the chrome the way my wife had taught me to polish the chrome. In long, slow circles, from the center outward, the way she'd shown me on her father's 1957 Chevy in the summer of 1996. At 1:54, a Cedarvale patrol unit turned into the cul-de-sac. The patrol unit was a 2022 Ford Explorer with the new Cedarvale PD blue and silver livery. Sergeant Tucker Brennan was driving. He's 34, 6 years on the force, good cop. Lane Murchison was in the passenger seat, 23, out of the academy 14 months. The unit rolled at 5 miles an hour up the cul-de-sac and stopped 20 feet from my driveway. Hadley Lockwood, across the street, smiled. Brennan stepped out first. He adjusted his utility belt. He looked at the Mustang. He looked at the man in jeans and a UGA cap kneeling at the grill. He started up the driveway. Murchison followed 2 paces behind him with his thumbs hooked in his belt. "Sir, Cedarvale PD, we have a report of a stolen vehicle at this address. Can you stand up and identify yourself?" I set down the chamois. I stood up. I turned around. I took off my cap. Tucker Brennan stopped walking. He stopped 2/3 of the way up the driveway, with his right hand floating 6 inches off his sidearm. His face did the thing that faces do when the brain has not yet given the rest of the body new instructions. Then he snapped to attention. Lane Murchison snapped a half-second behind him. Both of them threw a textbook salute. "Chief Halloran, sir." In the corner of my eye, Hadley Lockwood's smile fell off her face like a coffee cup off a table. I walked across the driveway. I held my badge up so the body cam could see it. I returned the salute, slow. "Sergeant Brennan, Officer Murchison, stand at ease. I want you to listen to me carefully." "Yes, sir." "The vehicle behind me is mine. I rebuilt it with my late wife and my son. The complainant standing across the street is the HOA president of this subdivision. She has filed a false stolen vehicle report against me. The receipt her son is holding is a forgery. Detective Holt Bramwell is 2 minutes out. Sheriff's deputies are 3 minutes out. I'm activating my body camera officially now and noting the time on the record as 1:55 and 22 seconds. Sergeant Brennan, you will tape the perimeter. Officer Murchison, you will escort the complainant and her son to the foot of their driveway and request that they remain in place until Detective Bramwell arrives. You will not engage with the complainant beyond directing her to remain. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Then go." Brennan moved. Murchison moved. The two of them walked across the cul-de-sac toward Hadley Lockwood, the way men walk toward something they have just realized they're going to remember for the rest of their careers. Hadley's mouth opened. She closed it. She opened it again. This is, there's been a misunderstanding. My son purchased this car." "Ma'am," Murchison said, politely, "the way the academy teaches you. I need you to stay where you are. We'll get this sorted." Bryson Lockwood sat down on the curb. He held the forged receipt loosely in his hand the way men hold a paper they have just realized was made out of glass. Detective Holt Bramwell pulled up at 1:58 in an unmarked Charger. He stepped out, badge on his belt, federal racketeering warrant in his left hand, an arrest warrant for Hadley Lockwood in his right. He walked across the cul-de-sac at a steady pace. He looked at Hadley. He looked at me. He nodded once. "Mrs. Lockwood, Hadley Marie Lockwood, you are under arrest for filing a false police report under Georgia Code Section 161026, forgery in the first degree under Code Section 1691, conspiracy to defraud, and 24 counts of fraudulent practices in the operation of a homeowners association. Stand up. Place your hands behind your back." The handcuffs went on at 1:59. At the exact same minute, 3 Forsyth County Sheriff's Office vehicles arrived at the Lockwood residence, 3 doors down. They executed a search warrant on the home office, and Whit Lockwood's commercial real estate office in Cumming. They found the laptop with the forged receipt template in the master bedroom desk. They found the HOA's secondary ledger in the home safe. They found $43,000 in cash. They found 2 unlicensed Inspector Polos in the laundry room. At 2:15, sheriff's deputies arrested Whit Lockwood at his real estate office on Tribble Gap Road. He was wearing a polo and khakis. He did not resist. At 3 o'clock, the Forsyth County DA's office unsealed a fraud investigation that had been quietly building for 14 days. It included charges of RICO violations under Georgia's Racketeering Act, 4 counts of real estate fraud, and 1 count of unauthorized practice of property inspection. At 5 o'clock, the Briarwood Glen Estates HOA board held an emergency meeting in the clubhouse. By 7, all 7 members had resigned. By midnight, the empire was over. I sat on my front porch in jeans, a UGA cap, and a navy t-shirt that still had a small bleach stain on the collar. My son sat next to me. The Mustang sat in the driveway. The body cam blinked once and powered down. Tate said one sentence. "Dad, Mom would have laughed." I said, "Bud, she'd have laughed her head off." Hadley Lockwood pleaded guilty on March 11th. 5 years in the Pulaski State Prison Women's Facility, 3 before parole eligibility. Full restitution of $192,000 to the residents she had defrauded. A permanent bar from serving on any homeowners association board or LLC officer position in the state of Georgia for the rest of her natural life. Whit Lockwood pleaded guilty in May to 12 counts of Georgia RICO, 4 counts of real estate fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy. 11 years federal. Their commercial real estate company was placed into court-supervised receivership. Briarwood Glen Community Development LLC was dissolved. The 4 homes the LLC had purchased at distressed prices were either returned to the original owners or sold at market, with the difference paid back to the original sellers. Bryson Lockwood was charged as an adult accessory to forgery. He pleaded down to a misdemeanor. He received 1 year of probation and 300 hours of community service at the Forsyth County Animal Shelter. He moved out of Briarwood Glen Estates in June and went to live with an aunt in Mobile. The Briarwood Glen Estates HOA dissolved by community vote in April. A new association was chartered with a 7-member board. The board was chaired by Adelaide Crisp, a retired Delta Airlines flight attendant who had been one of the 4 homeowners squeezed out of her home by the LLC in 2022 and who had recovered her property in the settlement. Adelaide insisted on one change to the new bylaws: that no member of the HOA board could simultaneously hold a financial interest in any LLC purchasing property within the subdivision. She got it unanimously. Sergeant Tucker Brennan and Officer Lane Murchison both received commendations from the Cedarvale Police Department for professional conduct in a confusing situation. Detective Holt Bramwell received a Georgia Bureau of Investigation citation. Sergeant Wynn Mercer received the Cedarvale Internal Affairs Excellence Award. Caspian Wells received a private letter of thanks from me on departmental letterhead. He framed it and hung it in his bedroom. He's going to UGA in 2027. The Mustang stayed. I drove it once a month from then on. I drove it down the cul-de-sac and up Atlanta Highway and out to the cemetery where Marguerite is buried, parked it at the curb, and sat with it in the driver's seat for an hour the first Saturday of every month, with the windows down and the radio off. In May, the year after the salute, I established the Marguerite Halloran Automotive Trade Scholarship at Forsyth Technical College. It funds 2-year programs in automotive restoration, bodywork, and engine repair for first-generation college students in Forsyth, Hall, and Dawson counties. Tate volunteers as a peer mentor every fall semester. The first apprentice we funded was a young man named Riggs Holcomb, whose father drove a tow truck for 30 years before he was hit by a car on Interstate 985 in 2022. Riggs rebuilt his first carburetor in November. I sent Marguerite's brass dash plaque to a metal shop in Roswell to be reproduced. I sent a copy to every graduating apprentice in the program. The plaque reads, "For my 2 favorite men." Last night, Tate and I drove the Mustang to the diner on the corner of Atlanta Highway and Pilgrim Mill Road. We ate fried chicken and biscuits and gravy at the counter. The window air conditioner rattled. The jukebox played George Strait. The waitress called me sweetheart. Tate ordered a slice of pecan pie and didn't finish it. He never does. We drove home with the windows down. The longleaf pines smelled clean. The Cardinal was back on the mailbox. I'm Sterling Halloran. That was my car. That was my late wife's car. That was my son's car. That was the salute.
Hadley Lockwood didn't fall because Sterling Halloran outgunned her. She fell because Sterling Halloran outweighted her. For 6 years, she'd been weaponizing a police dispatch line and a forged notary stamp and a shell LLC her husband ran out of their second bedroom. And not once in those 6 years has anyone in her subdivision asked a basic question. Who actually lives in the house at 4815 Brinewood Glen Drive? That's the lesson. A bully who's been winning quietly assumes she'll keep winning quietly. Real strength is the patience to let her assume that until the moment she calls the wrong officers to the wrong driveway. Sterling didn't beat her with anger. He beat her with documentation. He paid the fines, he locked the dates, he saved the plastic jug. He called the people who needed to know that not a single person who didn't. He let her dig the hole until the hole became a federal case. If you ever had an HOA decide they could come for something that wasn't theirs, your car, your land, your kids' pool pass, your story in the comments. We hear each other. Please subscribe for more. Next week, we head to Texas Hill Country, where an HOA tried to seize a rancher's water well. Turns out his father drilled half the wells in 3 counties.